Welcome back to Advice from the Heart. Today I am joined, of course, by none other than Christopher Hart. Say hello to the beautiful people, Chris.
Hello, beautiful people.
And my name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. Today the topic is all about this upcoming recession. The question is, what should an enterprise do as the recession really hits you? And kind of just want to dive right into it, Chris. Recession's coming. What do enterprises kind of, if you're in the C-suite, how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, it's a unique situation, right? We've had a pandemic for 2 years and everybody thought, oh no, the pandemic, and they drew down tons of money. And then all of a sudden there was piles of other very innovative companies that said, whoa, wait a second here. We could still make a lot of money here in regards to what's going on. Maybe not the airplane industry or something like that, but we could touch on industry specific things as we get a little further into the conversation. But I think as an organization, you really have to take stock in yourself and say, what is the appropriate kind of spending that needs to be done now for your organization to make sure you're ready to do business for when the recession goes away or changes or makes a turn, right? I like the phrase, there's no such thing as luck. There's when preparedness and opportunity have a serendipitous relationship, and all of a sudden, boom, you're in the right place at the right time and you've done all the things. Now, if you're a company, so let's just break this up into two company types.
Yeah.
There's, hey, we've never done SEO correctly, and we've always relied on our brand name or paid advertisement or something. We'll talk about that in a second, right? And then there's the other side of the coin, which are companies that have some level of marketing and some varying levels of SEO skill sets, right? Now, granted, in a recession, you may want to cut back your marketing budgets in some instances. I mean, it constantly happens. And I think way too many companies make this huge mistake where they look at short-term volatility and market volatility, and they suddenly start like jamming their heads in the ground, and they're making long-term plans based upon short-term indicators, and then they're stuck, and then all of a sudden they're out of the box and they're not competitive, right? But if you're an SEO company or you're a company brand that is working with an SEO agency and or has an SEO team in-house, during a recession, now is a great time for you to think about, do I need to buy any net new technologies? Because net new technologies are going to be cheaper to buy during a recession, because many companies, in some instances, are looking to make sales where they can make sales, and times might be tough, so you might be able to negotiate in your favor. The other thing is, you probably may not have a pile of other business development opportunities running around the place because you shut down on some of those things. So now's the time for you to really get in there and say, hey, I've been putting off doing all of this tech level SEO, this development work, the nuts and bolts structured stuff. Now you got time in your dev queue because other projects aren't there, you get to take advantage of it, right? But you also have to look at this from a standpoint of SEO isn't a thing where you get to turn it on and turn it off and be equally positioned when you turn it back on, right? If you turn the thing off, in turning that thing off, you are inevitably going to slowly deprecate in areas. Maybe not all areas, but you're probably going to deprecate in areas that are highly competitive, and you're literally going to be giving the opportunity you're vacating to a competitor who's wise enough to be paying attention in that marketplace, right?
Yeah, and to your point, I think a lot of companies actually learned that lesson the hard way, to your point, during the pandemic, right? Like they took the foot off the gas, and here we are a couple of years later, and they've got leapfrogged by a bunch of companies.
Right, so we had a company that we were working with that was in the banking industry, right? I can't mention names. I'm not a name dropper anyway, but we were doing a lot of content with them prior to the pandemic, right? And banks traditionally have this problem of, hi, we have a brand name. I'm going to take this pamphlet that I've distributed across my billions of franchisees or branch offices and convert that to a page, and now I've got a website. No, that does nothing to fill the space of creating the content for the audience you're trying to meet, the audience you need, and learning how to meet them in conversation through this content you're publishing to understand their journey through decision processes. And we were really on top of that publishing process, and I pushed out a lot of content. And at that time when the pandemic hit and a lot of other banking institutions withdrew and did stuff, this bank, their rankings shot up because what they were working on prior to that, for the last 6 to 9 months prior to that, suddenly had huge relevancy. People were refinancing homes. Interest rates at that time were still low. The buyer's market, people were moving. So we were able to capitalize on this versus just, I'm going to pull away and do nothing with it, right? And when you're working in an environment where the end result is dictated by a middleman, i.e. Google or a search engine, that has to learn about what you're writing, put it through their algorithms, crawl it, matriculate it, you have to earn links, you got to do a bunch of other stuff. It's not on and ready to go. You've got to ramp up earning point of view. Now's the time to say, hey, I'm about to go into this potential recession. What do I need to do to clean my house? How do I purge my garage? How do I look at my old content and figure out what isn't needed, and how could I realign that and clean up that inventory, right? How could I set the team in place, making proper hires, right? Speaking of banks, there was an article on CNBC where Jamie Dimon, smart dude, talks about investment, like the CIO investment right now, right? A lot of them are talking about, how do I invest in technologies that will make me more efficient come the end of the recession? But the reality is that efficiency is an ongoing thing, because you don't just spend money on stuff and then say it declines. There's spending money on technologies and then owning, running, operating, and maintaining it. This belief of, if I buy a piece of technology or do a thing, it's going to solve it. I'm not going to need some animal or human to pay attention to some human to pay attention to what's occurring. So I think right now when we get these kinds of, and it used to be the way, the .com boom to .com crash, that was a totally different issue right there, in the sense that entire overinflated industry segments that never generated any revenue or earnings anywhere before in the past, who were propped up on pure speculation, that's an issue. And you're an organization that's going to have to deal with things very differently, and you're either going to pivot or you're going to go the way of the dodo bird and the sock puppet from pets.com, right? Which I happen to have one somewhere, to be honest.
It's a really good point, though. I think that each recession is kind of different. Like the .com is different than the housing crash of 2008, and that's going to be different than what we're coming out of the pandemic here.
Right?
You make a great point. It's like you really need to look at the status of your business. If you overspend when you're doing well, of course you're going to have to cut when you tighten the budget. So it's really all about almost going in there with a scalpel and spending appropriately and spending ongoing at the appropriate amount.
Yeah, and you do have to look at it uniquely. You can't just go, I'm going to do this whole, whitewash it with one big paintbrush, or say my entire industry segment's doing this. You got to think about that. Maybe that industry segment is showing that your competitors really weren't as strong as they were in the past, and they're pulling back in certain areas. And you were wisely managing your monies and your spends and your budgets and your P&L, and you now have a pile of cash that a recession is not necessarily a negative thing. It's a positive opportunity, because your competitors were poorly managed. So it makes their positions easier for you to overtake. So you don't want to just wholesale say retract, right? And if you haven't done, and in this case we're talking about SEO, right? If you haven't done SEO correctly in the past, right now is a great time for you to be thinking about how can you get started, because some of these other traditional ad buy spends, return on that's going to be lower because during a recession, people may very well be conserving their budget spend, right? But they're always looking, right? Which is why SEO and search is a very important thing, because people are always searching for things. And that really gives you an opportunity to get in stream in that dialogue, to really know your audience. And it takes time for you as an organization to figure out the lay of your land, your competitive landscape, and exactly how much of a runway are you going to need, right? This recession, a recession or any downturn, may actually be a self-imposed runway that's going to give you an opportunity to ramp up, to be ready and operational when your audience is ready, versus, hi, I didn't do any of that. Now my audience is ready. Now you just missed a pile of opportunity during the recession. And now you aren't ready to capture any of that revenue that they're ready to spend when they're ready to spend it. Because if you're just starting to do stuff when you're seeing spends move, you're going to be 3-4 months minimum too late.
Exactly. It's all about, and I love the way you frame it, it's about looking at the opportunity and being proactive. And even if you're 10 years too late in terms of getting your processes in place, it's not too late to start now, because consumer behavior is changing. You always need to do audience research. You always need to update your audience research to move with your audience. So if you're starting that now, you are setting a new foundation for whatever new search behavior you're going to see over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So you should do it, whether you're I guess the point is, and to kind of bring this all full circle, is whether you have the right SEO team in place and you've been doing it all along, or you don't and you need to start now is a time to kind of refocus, regather your steam and start, right?
It's a great moment that's environmentally presented to you by outside forces that allow you to be very introspective on the topic of how to address these issues, versus bean counting, dollar line, move, no. Like, I get that, but you really have to look at it this way. For one final example, guaranteed people in your industry are going to pull back, competitors, guaranteed, which is going to leave users in some areas partway through a decision process and then unsatisfied with customer service at the close, at the final mile, or groups of people that made a product purchase and aren't getting the support they need, or they're feeling the business that they made the purchase from is wavering, and then they're not sure if they made the right choice. So there's tons of ways of looking at how do I find opportunity and exploit opportunity during a time of uncertainty.
Yeah, so well said, and it's a great place to kind of, finish this off for this episode of Advice from the Heart. So there you have it. Basically, there's never been a better time to do your SEO. Chris, so if you're in the C-suite last thing and you're waking up tomorrow, what's the first thing that you do to kind of get the ball rolling?
First thing I would say is, how are we spending monies to currently engage with our client? Get a better understanding around the marketing budgets and how that marketing budget is tied to the technology budgets, right? And then figure out what is the plan during this time of uncertainty. Because if I'm an organization that's feeling uncertainty, my clients, site users, searchers are feeling uncertainty. How can I codify that relationship with them through these marketing messages and engagement online to make them know they're with the right company? And how do I then get predatory in the sense of how do I exploit the weaknesses of my competitors who aren't or haven't been as diligent as my stronger company has been, and now suddenly this weakness in the environment undercuts them and you suddenly have a vacant place where you could move into. And if you're one of those companies that has that's been undercut and is suddenly feeling this trepidation, you really need to start working on things that change that view of your organization, because if you just pull back, perception is reality, and people are going to be like, oh, that company's dead.
There you go. Be a lion, be a predator, be the king of the jungle, and take over your SEO. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. This has been Christopher Hart with Advice from the Heart. Thanks again, Chris, for joining us and giving us your unsolicited, amazing advice.
My unsolicited.
I love it. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you all at the next episode. Bye.